they'll run off. What a chap.
Which sound?
That's Sam. I don't see her, but
Do you turn on me sound?
yeah.
No. I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure it's interesting, but.
Jeff, you said is not by volume, right? And an accuracy is not by volume.
Try good, use the
Accuracy is not by volume.
fucking mouth.
I think I know what I said, and I think I'm the expert on what I said. I think I know a little bit better than you.
They are not the
So tell me what brand lunch
chance
is.
to go around and grab the hole.
Which
It's
company?
called lunch the hole.
How do I get a hold of the lunch?
You got booty shaking with a
How do I get a hold of the
You're an ass, Roy. Your ass is over here
How
clapping.
do I get a hold of the Lunchables company? How do I call them?
I'm playing a 20 minutes
No,
long.
look,
You see
these
how
agreements are circumstantial, right? And from brand to brand, agreements are always going to be the same. In some circumstances, they may be different. In some circumstances, they may be the same. Even in some cases, these bulk buys of these white-labeled store brands are actually QC refusals of other products that didn't quite make it to the same cut.
People do, and he's right on the worst, bro.
Yeah, all those gas lights you came in, this over concrete was like, what? It's the same, my what?
Yeah, it's the same.
What?
It is.
Oh, no, there you go, you're happy, just like that. Imagine. So, with that precursor, right now, welcome to the room, Larry. Mosh, Sean, Fatima, John.
We were arrogant. You never knew my story.
Chat, which is linked above, which you are encouraged to join to watch the fireworks or participate. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on Facebook Messenger. It's there for you. Glistening Outlook, I love that nickname. Sunny, Thomas, and another Joe, and Glistening, welcome to the stage. We'll be starting here in less than a minute at precisely the top of the hour to talk about this very important issue of whether the president is serious about serving another term and whether he can. I'm going to expand this beyond what everybody thinks is so obvious. So welcome to the Critical Thinking Forum. We're here Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. New York time. Today's topic is, does Trump really want another term, and can Trump really get another term? See how I managed to get both of those questions into one sentence in the finite amount of space I have to do the title? I thought that was pretty cool. Handing myself on the back so hard that I'm going to break my arm. So, of course, everybody, and Joanne just posted it very strongly in the chat. No, he can't. The Constitution doesn't allow it. He can't do it. Full stop. Not even worth the discussion. Why are you even bothering with this, Gary? Well, because we don't know whether they'll figure a workaround as they claim they will. We don't know whether they will follow the Constitution. We don't know what, if they don't follow what we believe the Constitution says, the Supreme Court will try to stop him. We don't know if the Supreme Court stops him or tries to, whether there's a mechanism to actually enforce a Supreme Court ruling. We don't know any of this. So let's just backtrack a little bit to talk about why we're discussing this. As recently as yesterday, the president suggested that he might run for or serve, which is a different issue. Serving and running for are two different things, another term. Is he joking? Is he serious? Sometimes he appears to be trolling the Democrats. Sometimes he seems to be serious. Bannon seems to be serious about it. And Joanne is correct. There is no realistic, lawful way today to bypass the Constitution's two-term limit. Unless there would be a constitutional amendment, which obviously is not in the cards. The 22nd Amendment, which was ratified in 1951, says, quote, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. Well, I don't know about to you, but to Gary, that's been plain. You can't be elected more than twice. But are there legal workarounds? Because there are those who have been suggesting it, the pundits have. So there are some theoretical ideas that some people believe is possible. A lot of people think not. But I don't know what's possible and what isn't with this particular administration. What if he were to run as vice president and then succeed to the presidency? Is that a workaround? What if he contested the meaning of elected? The word elected versus serve. Of course, any mainstream constitutional scholar would suggest that the intent is when you say elected, it means serve. But I don't know. It's been floated. I'm not floating it, but I'm saying that people have been floating that possibility. How about a House contingent election? Electoral college maneuvers or other technical workarounds. That's been discussed. I understand that those would face enormous constitutional and political obstacles. It would probably, most certainly prompt an immediate Supreme Court review, but again, and by the way, throw the nation into a constitutional crisis. Who knows what the Supreme Court might rule, and even if the Supreme Court were to rule what one would think that they ought to rule, who is going to enforce it if he decides not to leave office? Amending the Constitution is the only straightforward, lawful method, constitutional amendment, but as I suggested, altering the 22nd Amendment, that is a mountain way too high, in my opinion. So legally, it seems to Gary that Joanne is correct. There's no viable, legitimate shortcut today that will reliably allow Mr. Trump to serve a third elected term. But note that I chose the word elected. Politically, could he do it within our current framework? Highly unlikely. So why are we discussing it? Joanne asked me in the text, in the chat above. Why are you even bringing this up? My answer to her and others who have that question is, even if it's not legally feasible, this is persistent talk of a third term. So if nothing else, does that not affect the dynamics of politics in the country? Doesn't it reshape party dynamics? Doesn't it influence fundraising and messaging? Can it not unsettle opponents? So even if it can't be done, I think we can all agree that this rhetoric does have an impact, even if there's no legal pathway. And then again, whether it's true or not, whether he's trolling us or not, he and Bannon, both he and Bannon, most strongly Bannon, are telling you and me there is a way. Bannon said it last week. There is a way, and we will reveal it very soon. Again, Joanne may be very correct. Gary, you're playing into their trolling. Why? more serious things to discuss. But I will tell you that I know people even before they started talking about this publicly who have been concerned, and whether they're just alarmists or not, that the president will find a way not to leave office at the end of his term. They believe, whether it's true or not, I'm not suggesting it's true, but there are people who feel that our republic is doomed now, unless the Supreme Court stands up to his apparent desires, which I say apparent because there's no way of knowing whether he's for real or whether he's messing with people. Unless if the Supreme Court does stand up to it, he's willing to adhere to what the Supreme Court says, or if he's not, there's actually a mechanism to ensure that the ruling of the Supreme Court holds. Let me just say this. Even if there is zero opportunity for him to remain in office at the end of this term, zero opportunity, and he recognizes it ain't gonna happen. The fact that he is floating this as President of the United States, if in fact he is doing this just to mess with people's emotions, is in Gary's mind, you could disagree, come to the stage and front me off on this, almost worse than doing it, actually doing it. Why would a president of the United States play the population in this manner? Is it funny? Is that what the president is supposed to be? Funny? Sort of like the meme of him with a crown dropping excrement on the top of the people protesting the Snow Kings thing because they're afraid that this administration is becoming autocratic and starting to resemble a monarchy. Is that funny? I think it is funny if it was an editorial cartoon. I think it's funny if some Trump supporter creates it and publishes it. Okay, it's funny, making fun of people with whom you disagree. But for the president to retweet it on his Truth Social, I don't know whether he created it or somebody in his administration created it, or whether he picked it up from someplace and he reposted it. He's mind-fucking people in the country. And I'll just say, this is Gary's values. I've always believed that an elected official, once elected, is representative, serving all the people from whom that his position involves. Obviously, in his case, it's the entire population. And I think that when a politician has this kind of a character flaw, it really takes away from any of the positive things that he is doing. And anybody who has been reading the chat or has been paying attention to any of the rhetoric knows that there are pundits and regular people out there who cannot abide by giving him credit for anything he does that's good. And you hear people who are supporters of the president come to the microphone here and say, he could cure cancer. And these people would find a reason to criticize that. And I think they're right about that. But is there not potentially a cause and effect to that criticism? People are, rightly or wrongly, extremely concerned when the President of the United States and when his chief political architect, Steve Bannon,
champ in the republic.
Isn't that bad enough? Okay, that's Kerry's opinion, and maybe I'm overstating it. Obviously, I don't think I am, otherwise I wouldn't have said it. But what do you have to say about this? I'm going to start calling people in the order in which I see them on the stage. And today, that order begins with Marshall, followed by Howard.
Howdy, I'm going to start with what happens if you won't leave office. That presumes that there was an election. If he decides not to leave the White House, Howard, from one executive to the next, which is over at 12:01 noon. So at 12 noon, he is still president and still has the plenary power of the office. At 12:01 noon, the guy on the Capitol steps is now the president with all the plenary power. So I think that's important to note, and that newly elected president would instruct either the DOJ or the FBI to remove the president out of the White House, the former president out of the White House. So I also want to go into, you quoted the 22nd Amendment. I want to quote the 12th Amendment, which I think is important to note. The 12th Amendment, this is in the chat for people, is the election of the president and the vice president. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote ballots for president and vice president on one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state as themselves. They shall name about their person, they shall name their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots, and the person who voted for vice president. Now, where do we go? Let's see. Where is it? There's a specific part of the 12th Amendment where, it's the last sentence, I think. There it is. But no person shall be constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president. Meaning, if you're not eligible to serve as president, you've already served for 2 terms by the plain reading of the 22nd Amendment, you are not eligible to be vice president. So, the other thing I want to look at, and I put this in the chat too, it's an article from NPR. NPR is National Public Radio, for those who are aware, I'm sure most people are aware. National Public Radio is slightly to the left, but I think this is important. This article was written by a dude named Hansai Lowell. Presidents can be twice elected. Presidents can be elected twice. Trump could try and run around that, experts say. So, in the wake of Trump saying he wanted to serve a third term, Representative Dan Goldman of New York introduced a House resolution which would not allow people to serve 2 non-terms to move. There is a legal scholar by the name of William Bond, professor at the Constitutional Law Institute at the University of Chicago. There is no wiggle room. One on the rule the presidents can't be elected more than twice. So Bond is going to be quoted throughout this article. There are 2 bets, but winning an election is not the only way a person can become president, and there are 2 hypothetical situations involving presidential succession, Bond adds, that are not addressed fully in the Constitution's text. They reveal ways which the common understanding of the 22nd Amendment presidential term limits can be challenged in court. So this is, I think, one of the most important pieces. If the current president, is to try to want to serve a 3rd term, he is going to have to go to court and lodge an argument that says he can do so. In 1999, a Minnesota Law Review article called "The Twice and Future President" explains that a twice-elected president can become vice president, and then if the current president were to be removed from office, resign, or die, return as commander-in-chief. The federal government sanctioned record of interpretations of the Constitution also points to the possibility of a former 2-term president serving as Speaker of the House of Representatives or as another federal officer could become president through the Presidential Succession Act of 1947. All of these are hypothetical situations which get around key wording in the 22nd Amendment's restriction. Elected. There definitely was an awareness that the more narrow language they'd come up with was not going to cover every scenario. It explains Bruce Peabody is an article and co-authors of the Professor of Government and Politics at the Fairleigh Dickinson University. Says Congress, in terms of considering proposals, would have twice elected president not eligible for a third term. So, in a different state, Brian Holt, law professor at Michigan State University, wrote about a hypothetical two-term president getting nominated for run for vice president in what's called constitutional cliffhangers and a legal guide for presidents and their enemies, calls loophole in the 22nd Amendment. 22nd Amendment's term limit. Dwight Eisenhower alluded to this. Let's see. The only thing this is Eisenhower, the only thing I know about the presidency the next time is this. I can't run, but someone has raised the question that if I were invited, I could constitutionally run for vice president, and you might find out that one, I don't know. In decades since the similar chatter, loopholes, and legal political circles has surrounded twice elected presidents, including Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. Let's see. Other legal experts, however, point to the last sentence of the 12th Amendment, which covers the Electoral College as a roadblock for any twice elected president attempting to run for the White House to the vice presidency. It says no person constitutionally ineligible for the office of president shall be eligible to run for the vice presidency. Still, in court, a lawyer could try to argue being a natural born citizen, at least 35 years old, and a resident of the United States for at least 14 years, and the only presidential eligibility requirements specified. Says Stephen Gillard, a professor emeritus at New York University School of Law, who proposed in 2004 that Bill Clinton run for vice president. Quote, I want to make it very, very clear. I'm identifying an argument that Trump could make in order to get back into the White House. I'm not endorsing it, Gillard says. But we know the expertise, the experience, that even if it's far-fetched, and if it offers the possibility of a third presidential term, Trump will make it. If his health holds up, he will make the argument he likes the job. Whether or not it succeeds in court is another matter. To avoid any other debate about whether the 12th Amendment forbids presidential electors from choosing a twice elected president as a third term, Gillard says there could be a similar arrangement in which Trump does not run on the winning Republican ticket, but after the newly elected vice president resigns, becomes vice president with congressional approval. It is not impossible, and just the existence of the possibility of it in the next 4 years gives Trump power that enhances his position, Gillard says. How could the U.S. Supreme Court react to any attempt? More straightforward possibility that some constitutional scholars have not ruled out is Trump running for a third term as president, regardless of what the 22nd Amendment says. Quote, if you think about it, the 22nd Amendment assumes that one would follow the Constitution, so Gloria Brown Marshall, a constitutional scholar and law professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. But if one is not going to follow the Constitution, what difference does it make what's written there? Any attempt, administration, Trump will likely start lawsuits, and we have an extreme polarized environment. The court has ways of ducking the 22nd Amendment question, and if the court ducks the question, then it would be up to other actors when states were taking nominations and primary votes, or Congress at the moment at which it determines who won the Electoral College, to decide whether the 22nd Amendment had the force of law, Huck says. Brown Marshall warned that such attempts to the present president could destabilize the U.S. political landscape at a time instructional, in which he says, if the court chooses not to follow the plain reading of the 22nd Amendment, then what does the 22nd Amendment actually matter? And so I'll land with those things.
You know, as you were talking, I was going to make Marshall Brown's comment position, to take that position and kind of throw it in your face, and then you went to her. This is a problem that a lot of people have. You are correct when you say, or one is correct when one says, no, under the Constitution, he cannot. Full stop, no discussion, go on to another topic, Gary. But there are people who believe by hook or by crook, and I don't know whether it's his intention, and I don't know how successful he would be if it is. But there are a goodly number of people who believe that by hook or by crook, his intention is to not leave office, presuming, as you point out, that his health holds out. And then what? And then what, if that's the case? Or, Gary, shut up. You're scaring people even worse than the president is when he trolls them with this nonsense. Am I? Thank you,
I
Marshall.
don't think you are. I don't think you are. I meant to say this in the chat, but just didn't get around to it. Great topic. I have my personal set view of the topic, but as the article I just read said, there are avenues for questions, not avenues for strictly, hey, you absolutely can. But as Brown points out, if the Supreme Court doesn't follow the plain reading, then what good is the 22nd and the 12th Amendment in the first place?
I think one of the problems that we have with this presidency is when a president says something, the nation listens. The media cover it. We don't know the veracity of what he says or whether he intends what he proclaims. Are we supposed to ignore it? At our own peril, in my opinion. Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to Howard, followed by Scott.
Thanks, Gary. I'm just going to give perspective, and it's actually different than Marshall's perspective on this. I mean, what do we know? We do know that January 6th did happen, so at least there's been demonstration of behavior of, hey, I really don't want to leave office, and I don't believe in fair elections. So January 6th, whether you agree politically that it was an insurrection or not, but that event did happen. So my point of view is, since then, Supreme Court has also granted something called presidential immunity, and I think we caution everyone. I don't think we should just put this in the traditional framing filter of the past or what any precedent has happened. I think we're in a new paradigm, and I could see a scenario where through an executive order, if there's a tremendous amount of doubt of the outcome of an election, and we already have, and today I believe the president in Japan was talking or made reference to the National Guard, and he made reference that there could be other military beyond the National Guard on city streets. You could see a scenario where if there's tremendous doubt in the outcome of an election, there's an executive order that's being issued that's going to just extend. It technically may not even be called a third term. It's just going to be an extension of the existing term until everything can be totally resolved. And it's just going to lead to obviously a lot of chaos and upheaval and who knows what. But I wouldn't put it past that through the executive order process combined with presidential immunity, who's going to stop this from happening if that's the path he wants to go down? So interested in other thoughts on it, and I'm just saying that I don't expect that necessarily to happen, but I do believe, Gary, it is a possibility, and I'll land it there.
So you interject something that Marshall and I did not, and that is the presidential immunity, and that's a major component to this discussion. You're absolutely correct.
And if we're in a state of war or there's a perceived national emergency, sorry folks, we're going to have to defer it. And right now, until it all gets resolved, we're just going to keep the
margin to defer state elections.
Where's that, Marco?
I said, how do you defer state elections? Yes, the Federal Election Commission has large governance over presidential elections, but the elections for senators and for House members and for your local dog catcher, that's all done on a state level. How could the president cancel elections in the state of Texas, or how could the president cancel
I don't know,
elections?
but
The
Marshall,
time, place, manner clause is clearly derived to the states. It's not derived to the federal government.
I want to connect this conversation to the one we used yesterday. What happens if he's realizing, you know what, maybe in 2028, let's be in a situation where during the election process, the government shut down? Then what?
At least in my view, the time plus manner clause still derives. The only exception I'm aware of the federal government having strict control over is the presidential election. Yes, they can make rules governing House and Senate elections as the time place manner clause declares. The time place manner clause derives anything below the level of president to the states. And I don't know how you cancel 50 separate state elections all across the country. Luckily, Your Honor's here, and so if he is able to stick around for the full length of this, he has much broader expertise in that election space than I do.
I'm just challenging you to think beyond the traditional paradigm. That's my point.
Isn't that, Marshall, to answer your question directly, Marshall, isn't that what's happening in Arizona right now? The Speaker of the House decides, well, we just won't convene. And if we can't convene, it's impossible for us to seat a duly elected member of Congress. Well, if the Speaker of the House just decides we won't convene and therefore we can't certify the election, then Donald Trump remains president. Could that not happen?
Yes, I think that could happen in contradiction of our Constitution. But yes, that seems like a possibility. Not a right one, but it does seem like a possibility if the House refuses to ratify what the Electoral College did. Then yeah, you don't have the president-elect.
And remember, you're not my
It's the election, but you don't have a declared winner by our metrics.
Remember, Mike Pence is not Vice President of the United States. Just want to point that out, that if we have some kind of a repeat of the November attempt to stop the certification of the election, the guy who stood between that attempt and its success was Mike Pence. But Mike Pence is not part of this equation any longer. I'm not trying to be overly alarmist myself, but it does concern me when the president says he's going to serve another term. And as you point out, Marshall, the Constitution says he can't. So then why is he saying it? Is it because he doesn't really mean it? Or because he does?
I think because he does it, because he thinks he can say it. I don't know whether that'll mean that he actually can do it. But as the article I pointed out read, if the Supreme Court, if he sues over the 22nd and the 12th Amendment, and the Supreme Court says, well, the plain meaning of those texts are not what the plain meaning of those texts are, then yeah, we could be in a bad place. And as Howard points out, if you don't have somebody to ratify what the Electoral College did, you actually have a declared winner for our media apparatuses and for the population, but not for any of the constitutional metrics that would put that person in office.
Thank you, Marshall and Howard. We're going to go to Scott, followed by Brett. Scott.
Gary, my good friend, good evening to you. It's a wonderfully gray day here in the city of brotherly love. And, wow, what a topic, Gary. What a Pandora's box you've opened. And what a sort of, this is fascinating. Thank you to my friends, if you can stop the electoral college, if you can get some irregularity, if you can get J.D. Vance to not certify, what happens? It goes to the House, and the House then votes not along individual membership lines. It votes by delegation. California gets a vote, Montana gets a vote, Maine gets a vote, Florida gets a vote. Trump will certainly, right now, and even after the midterms, because I think Republicans have an advantage in that configuration, would certainly be awarded the presidency if somehow he remained on the ballot, there was an irregularity, and that, or as said before, maybe there's an irregularity, and it goes to the House, and the House votes Trump in. There's so many irregularities I can imagine. I'm not depending on this court to abide by a plain reading of the Constitution. I'd like it if they did. But man, wow, bets are off, baby. So there's just a lot of variables there. Why is Trump doing this? Great question. And none of us are named Trump sad, right? Really, thank God for us, right? But you have trusted surrogates like Steve Bannon, they're saying this is for real. This is no joke. This is happening. Trump, sometimes saying he'd like to do it, sometimes saying, we've got people that say, people are saying that I'd love to do it, but I don't know. He's playing coy. I have a couple thoughts in that regard. One, Trump, what does Trump love more than anything? Relevance, right? What's less relevant than a lame duck? Right? And after the midterms, you're a lame duck, and really it's been said the presidency is 18 months, right? Because after 18 months, people are in full election mode for the midterms, and then you're a lame duck, right? So he's already halfway there to the end of his second term. So this keeps you relevant. This ends the lame duck factor. You are in a position of permanent relevance if you keep this going, right? You don't have the lame duck sort of moniker and baggage over your head. He also might be doing it just to troll, right? Just to sort of screw the Democrats, which he's great at. And seeing Democrats with their hair on fire. And look, I think we've seen that the authoritarian card has not to date been very effective. As far as no King's protests notwithstanding, right? The No King's movement had a lot of participation. That being said, it still hasn't been the silver bullet. So I think it's something that Trump actually kind of wants at times. Yes, then he can say, I'm not a king, I'm not a dictator, look at these people, I'm kind of mocking the Democrats and having them light their hair on fire. Maybe part of him would like a third term, right? But I think the guy that's addicted to permanent relevance, even if he doesn't think there's a third term possibly, if the third term is somehow precluded, even if he's not resigned to doing it, which apparently Tucker Carlson said he was saying that he thinks this is all just theater. But even if it's theater, it serves a really effective purpose, I think, in that it gets him out of the lame duck situation and makes it politically relevant, right? And it keeps his relevance alive. Well, after the midterms, right? It keeps the party in line, right? If Trump's still politically relevant, he can hold the threats of primaries over people with much more force than if you were a lame duck and everybody was thinking about, the next guy or gal. Thanks.
Something you said about normalization causes my mind to go to the last time I raised an issue, a what-if issue, which this clearly is. And there were people who gave me some pushback, which is fine, saying, Gary, what you're bringing up is totally irrelevant, it won't happen, it can't happen, this is the United States of America, the Constitution won't allow for it, so why are you raising the issue? And that issue was when I suggested at the initial announcement of the ramping up of ICE immigration enforcement, that the day would come said an American citizen has to carry identification papers to show that they are a citizen. But if you meet a profile during an immigration sweep and you cannot prove that you are an American citizen, you are now incarcerated and it's sorted out later, which could be hours later, days later, weeks later, months later. No, Gary, that can't happen. The Constitution prohibits it. That's what I was told. Don't raise the issue because you're just trying to cause problems that don't occur, won't occur, can't occur. Well, the Constitution says the president can't do this too. So, why am I raising the issue? What? I don't know. Why am I? Thank you, Scott. We'll go to Brent, followed by Congressman.
You know, whether you live in a democratic republic, it's really not about the last election. It's about the next election. Whether the next election is going to be free or fair. You know, I think starting at whether he can be president again is one step up too far. I think you should first ask yourself, is he a person that is willing to do whatever is required to stay in power? I think he clearly is. You know, if you look at as Howard mentioned, if you look at the last election, there's January 6th, sure, but there was also schemes which, you know, Jack Smith detailed in the indictment, in which they had an electric scheme, in which they had false electors that were wanting to kind of throw the election down. Eventually, the idea was to pass it back to the House. The House does state delegations, which they had 26 at a time. So, you know, this was a well thought out plan to stay in office. And what really stopped him isn't himself. What really stopped him was administration. Mike Pence is one, but others was the administration that's like, whoa, this is too far, this is illegal, this is whatever. And that stopped him. That administration is dead. He doesn't have that administration. He has an administration that is willing to say, yes, sir, how can I make this happen? And you know, they're not really bound by the Constitution or the law, and they're thinking, you know, the Constitution says the president can't receive anything but his salary, which has to be set before his term. He's getting ready to pay himself $230 million at the U.S. Treasury and improving himself. That to me seems to be against the written language of the Constitution, but he seems to be okay with ignoring it. So when you kind of start from there, I think the real question is the mechanism he tries to stay in power, not how he tries to stay in power. I think, you know, running as vice president, that's one possible mechanism. I think, you know, that can plausibly work. I think there's probably other mechanisms he could probably utilize to stay in power. But whatever the mechanism is, whether that's extra constitutional, whether that's extra legal, I don't think we should put any doubt that he is willing to do that. The question is, will it work this time? And I said when he was reelected, you know, we might have just seen our last re-election. I still feel that way. There's a good chance we might have just seen our last free and fair election. I think there are hopeful signs. You know, that you know, some of the courts are still standing up. I think, you know, I think there's some hope that that's not the case, and he'll be in office. But I think we must, you know, accept some plausible chance that kind of the dream of our founders is now dead, and we live in something uniquely different.
Thank you, Brent. We're now going to listening, followed by candidate. Listening.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I think this is a good question to ask. I'm a little bit with Scott that I think she's trying to remain relevant and really doesn't want to get into that lame duck period. But there is that normalization that should, sorry about that, I had an alarm. For example, like even prior to his election, the recruitment and identification of loyalists who would pledge loyalty to Trumpism prior to his election, notably by John McEntee, who was a senior advisor, and James Bacon, who developed questionnaires to test the loyalty of new recruits they were going to add to a personnel database in order to recruit from. I think that possibly could be where we're getting some of these ICE recruits from. It's concerning that the DOJ effort did get rid of sort of the expert civil servants who understood what it meant to be in the civil service, which requires that you aren't pledging any loyalty to a particular candidate. So those things have already disrupted what would help to create a normal outcome should there be disruption. I do not think that any of the legal avenues that were discussed by Marshall are even something that would be considered at this point. I think a lot will depend on what our economy looks like going forward. The technocrats that have been investing heavily, they're doing it for their own good. This is a quid pro quo because they don't want to be heavily regulated, especially as they're developing new tools with AI that are going to disrupt the job market. So our economy is probably going to be disrupted during his term, like it was during COVID, actually, where there were a lot of people that were just out of a job. I think we're going to see that. I think if you look at the Trump 2020 merchandise, who benefits from that? It's the Trump organization. So it's the for-profit business empire owned by, you guessed it, Donald Trump and his family. So I think he's profiting heavily. I think it is a tool. And I think the MAGA, loyalists or cult, if you will, they like to troll people as well by wearing it. So they're going to purchase it, even though it's probably, a made in China bullshit piece of cloth that they can put on their head. But whatever, to each their own. If you want to buy the gold, whatever emblems that he has, that's up to you. But I do think it's concerning that it lays the groundwork for anyone else that should have cognitive capability at the time, because to be quite honest, the way that Trump has displayed himself over the last few days, you have to question his mental acuity. I don't think he's going to have what it takes in 2028 to pull off what he did in 2017, absent having a stand-in or look-alike, lead the crowd to prevent any sort of transition of power. But that is something that we have to consider that somebody else could look at in the future, because it does already lays the pathway to create an abnormality in our democracy. And if we don't repair it, and if we don't have elect candidates in Congress that are willing to put laws in place that are crystal clear, so that there aren't any loopholes that a somewhat biased court could potentially uphold, then we're definitely in trouble going forward, because we're no longer, as far as I can tell, we're no longer a city upon a hill. When you have ICE bashing car windows of people like American citizens who served our country because they are questioning whether they're a citizen or not, and they happen to have, brown skin, that we're in a whole new country, and it looks a little bit more like communist China to me than it does to anything related to having great America or making America great again. Thank you.
given that you are a candidate for Congress, and for presuming that you are elected in 2026 and re-elected in 2028, or even if you're not elected in 2026 and you are elected in 2028, what will you pledge to the American people to do as a member of Congress to ensure that the will of the people is followed when it comes to the certification of the presidential election, no matter what that outcome might be? And if in fact you are elected in 2026, what can you assure the American people here right now you will do to ensure that there are checks and balances that the Congress upholds as its responsibility with regard to the executive branch?
Hey Gary, great question. So I fed this question to Grok. Give me pros and cons, 5 each, of Trump attempting.
Rock.
Yeah, I'm using Grok on X. It ties into my profile. I'd like to read it to you if I may. It's very brief.
I know, but that's not answering my question. That's answering the question of the room. So you're right. They are great questions. Can you answer them as a candidate?
I would like to, but I would like to preface what I'm about to say with what Grok is telling us, which is supposedly more intelligent than me, right? Because AI is smarter than my brain. Is it okay, Gary, if I answer you the way I'd like to answer you? I mean, if not, I will just not read it and tell you what I think I can do for the constituents of the 16th district.
Well, I would appreciate that first. I want to know what you think. I don't care what Grok thinks. I can ask Grok the same question and get the same or maybe a different answer than you.
That may be true, but I did learn something from it, so I would like to share it afterwards. But I would just tell the voters of the 16th district, if that's who you're suggesting I'm addressing, that this is actually all clickbait, fake news, and the now is all important. And going back to what FDR said, as I said, I played FDR in our 8th grade play in Annie, is the only thing you have to fear is fear itself. And so this clickbait news about Trump seeking a 3rd term is the same thing as him posting an image on Instagram of him flying a plane over Democrats and cooking on
What he
them.
was referring to when he made the speech. When he made the speech, he was referring to government involvement in people's lives. He was saying there is nothing to fear from greater government involvement.
That's not what he said. That's not the quote, Marshall.
That's exactly.
It's not. Okay, I'm gonna have to Google this one. I've never read that.
It was not about World War II. It was not about.
It's a philosophical statement, you
It
fool.
was about the New Deal.
It's about fear. It's about courage. It's about bravery. It's a philosophy statement, Marshall.
People's lives in a greater way than they had previously. It's not about fear for Donald Trump. It's not about fear for something else. That was not the intent of the speech, and that wasn't what he gave it. So if you're going to quote the guy, you can at least put him in the vein that he said the thing in the first place.
All right. Well, let me get back to Gary's question. Thank you, Marshall, for your opinion there. I don't think it's fact what you're saying. I'll have to Google it. But, you know, as a congressperson,
Just read this speech, John. It's really not that difficult.
that's what I told you I would just do. Okay, if you want to Google it for me, you know, put it in the chat above, click that messenger link, Marshall, in your cheetah jacket there, and let everybody know the truth about that quote from FDR. If you're going to talk so much about it, do a little work. Post the link.
Okay, if I didn't post the link, I will when I get done driving.
Okay, great. Just pull over on the side of the highway right now. Just, you know, put your money where your mouth is. Just pull over right now and get the link. Okay, Gary, I'm ready to finish addressing your question.
So in the interim, I would like the candidate to address the questions.
Sure. Gary, I come from a philosophical position, and I just want the voters in the 16th district to know that Darren LaHood, who I'm running against, who is best friends with Donald Trump, is more than happy to see Donald Trump serve a 3rd term. But I have faith and respect for our president to know that he would not usurp our beautiful tradition and try to pull a fast one on us.
That wasn't the question that I posed to you, and your ability to answer a question with something that wasn't asked makes you now officially the politician that you claim to be.
Gary, is this the Gong Show? I'm trying to tell you my truth. I'm trying to be authentic and genuine here.
We're not talking about your truth. We're talking about the subject at hand. There's a giant difference.
All right, well, I can tell that the green bean fascist censors are hard at work to try to prevent me from talking about anything.
No, we simply want you to stick to the topic. That's not a fascist thing. That is you needing to stick to the topic in the room instead of making the room what you want it to be about, which you have a tendency to do.
All right, well, that could be projection, Marshall. Go check yourself before you wreck yourself in the mirror. What I'm trying to tell you is today I notarized 1,100 signatures or 117 petitions for my campaign. I'm taking action here. I can talk philosophy. If you want to talk legal mechanistic impeachment protocols, we can do that. But if you want to get angry and yell at me and censor me and prevent me from having a voice, well, sir, you are no gentleman. And that cheetah jacket you wear is not the jacket of a gentleman. That cheetah jacket you wear is the gentleman of a censor, a pimp.
I simply want you to stick to the topic.
Well, I would like him to answer the 2 questions that I asked him.
Go ahead, Gary. Repeat your questions. I'll try to give you a quick summary. But Marshall keeps interrupting me here in his cheetah jacket.
Oh, okay. I don't care what kind of clothes Marshall wears. That's not what's at issue here, right?
Of course not, but Marshall keeps interrupting me when I'm trying to give you my genuine, authentic response. Go ahead, Gary. If you want to summarize your 2 questions into one, I'd be happy to answer them for you. But I also had something I wanted to say. I didn't know this was a Q&A.
Well, you're running for office and we're discussing an issue that's paramount to the question that Congress may have to deal with. Folks trying to get on stage, it's past the time, sorry. Folks on stage, we will go into action time. We'll get to everybody's on stage.
Well,
So,
I
do
can.
you really need me to, did you forget it because?
I didn't forget it. I'm just telling you, if we have to impeach the president because he's thinking about trying to pull a fast one and get a 3rd term to be a Putin or be some type of, fascist, insane tyrant, it's not going to happen. Not under my watch as a congressperson. I can guarantee you Darren LaHood, who wants to take your guns, wants to tax and borrow and spend you to death, we're $37 trillion in debt. I'm a knight trying to fight as a patriot against all tyrants. This country has serious fiscal problems.
So what can the president is spending like crazy under the guise of fiscal responsibility, as he did in his first term. So what will you do as a member of Congress to tamp down that spending by the president?
Thomas Massey says we only need 6 or 7 patriot Republicans or Democrats to say no, and we can pass a defund the HR. We can defund the big beautiful bill with an HR act. But I got to tell you, Gary, the fact that you're going to bring up ICE operations and Border Patrol operations. I live here in Chicago. I see the arrests, and I see the shootings and the cops driving down the street because there's maniacs with guns in the streets. We live in crime town over here. So
we're not talking about immigration.
You brought it up, Gary.
John, the reason I brought it up was to make the comparison to the last time that I was told that I was raising an issue that would not come to fruition because the Constitution would not allow it. Now, you're going to suggest to me that people are not being stopped on the street and their citizenship papers being demanded by ICE agents?
No, that's happening.
And does that not concern you? Is that not a violation of the Constitution?
It concerns me that it concerns you, and it concerns me that people on the street who are American citizens are spit in the face of these law enforcement officers. Comply with the police, and there won't be any problems. We have a crime, immigrant, alien invasion on our hands.
Okay, we got it. Comply with the police, even if what the police are doing is unconstitutional. If you believe in that,
Censor! Censor! Here's a censor!
Very short. So Trump make jokes when he visited Malaysia, and he said all the nation leaders are very distinguished, except those from America. And then you say, no, I'm joking, and they all know.
Oh,
And he praised Marco Rubio. He is born for the job, excellent job he's doing. So he's praising people who work for him. If he's so serious, want to continue third term, he will be very careful to give praises for those people who work for him. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Dave. Daryl, followed by Matt. Hey, Gary, can you hear me? Loudly and clearly. So, it's this thing, like, people hear what they want to hear, right? Steve Bannon did an interview 2 weeks ago, and he said absolutely. He said Trump will be in for a third term, and he said people need to just get used to this and accept this, right? So you can hear this, and for some reason, some people will just say, oh no, it's not possible, can't happen. The only thing that you need for it to happen is for no one to actually get in his way. Right? I mean, look at what's happening, right? It's like it's 20, I think, 26, 27 days into the shutdown. How many people are actually noticing it anymore? I had a conversation with a buddy of mine last night. They had a big charity thing at Cipriani's down by Wall Street last night. No one's talking about the fact that the government's been shut down for almost a month. It's becoming normal. No one's talking about the fact that, Congress has been gone for almost a month to keep simply to delay a vote on Epstein. So it was Scott who said earlier, and I think you yourself said it earlier, this is going to be, it's the normalization of this stuff. It's not beyond the pale for this to continue, and then for him to say, look, we haven't had Congress in a month, maybe we don't need them, so we're going to do something, like we're going to either nerf them or castrate them or do something, because we haven't had them working in almost 30 days, for almost 30 days now. And look at what happened yesterday, right? So did you see the report about Mellon and 130 million to pay the military guys? Did you read that? So think about this. Like, do we want our military being paid by civilians? Like, what's happening here? Do we go from an all-volunteer army to basically mercenaries who work for the highest bidder? In a sense, I don't know. Why would the United States government take 130 million from a private venture? That's really a very important and interesting question. Because the United States never went to
So the administration can bail out black people from the Gilded Age. I'm not saying that that's the best policy opportunity, because I don't think it is. But I am saying it's happened more than once before, and we have gone back to normal operation.
Yeah, but on the face of it, it's the face of it, right? On the face of it, did it happen previously when the government was shut down?
The government was shut down until the administration. No, sir. It happened because the government didn't have enough money to
Marshall,
run
this
the science
story
standard
is-
anyway.
Okay, so what is it? Is it a I don't know.
Daryl and Marshall, if you don't mind me interjecting. That's a real important question, and perhaps it's one that we should discuss tomorrow. But today, the question is, does Trump really want another term, and can Trump really get another term?
I think he absolutely won. I think he'll lie. He'll say whatever it is he needs to say. He just needs the folks around him to do what they need to do. He needs Stephen Miller to do what they need to do. Again, all you have to do
You should go back to whence you came.
To secure America.
It's no. Go and secure America by yourself.
You're
You're
not
the greatest
touching
one.
me.
Go, bye.
Are you gonna tell Jamaica friends where you're from?
Leave.
Are you gonna tell Jamaica?
Okay, this is the John Kitover, Canada Congressman podcast. Ben, hope you enjoyed it. Health, wealth, love.
I go back which involved.
Mental health profiles. Like if you got PTSD, but you really want to go be a drill sergeant, and they're like, no, nigga, you still kind of crazy. You can either get a pro.
Hey, Marshall, you're all time. I am born in Thailand. My English will be with accent, but when it's with truth. I have a car accident 5 years ago, and since then I've become weirder and weirder. And I can speak 3 languages: human language, I learn light language, and I speak frequency. So feel into my words and question frequency. And oh, I am in all as my real name is Umaporn Sangchan. I'm born in Thailand in 1976 on the 17th of
July.
not afraid of you, afraid of God. Generator, operator, destroyer, hear me now. I am nowhere, but now here. I'm here for all.